Okay, so we want to talk about argumentation and the terms of an argumentative essay, the different parts. And to do that today, we get to talk about one of my favorite people, Dwight Schrute from The Office. So the topic that we're discussing is who is the worst manager, Dwight Schrute or Michael Scott? So this is something that we could debate. I'm going to take the side of Dwight Schrute. So if you're at this stage, you've already watched the video when Dwight becomes manager, at least acting manager at the time. Okay, so let's start by looking at the term argument. So an argument in general is the main statement of a poem, an essay, a short story, or a novel, and it usually appears when you look at nonfiction in the introduction. Or it's a point on which the writer will develop his work in order to convince his readers. So we know if you're talking about a poem or a short story, there's really a theme there that's being developed over time. We know if we're dealing with, an article or an essay, we're going to see early on, usually in the introduction, we're going to see the statement of the argument. In an essay, that's going to be the thesis statement. When we're reading an article, we usually look for the central idea. But in the end, an argument is just what the writer wants to prove to the reader through his or her work. It's what the writer strives to show or teach the reader. In argumentative writing, especially like an argumentative essay, it's the side that you take, the position that you take, and it's going to be your thesis statement. So our example here would be Dwight Schrute is the worst manager. Right? That's going to be what I'm going to argue. The other side's going to argue that Michael is the worst manager. So this would be the thesis statement in my essay. So it would be the last sentence in the introduction. Well, now I have to give reasons. So let's look at the term claim. First of all, a claim is a statement that asserts something to be true. A claim can be factual or a judgment. In an argumentative essay, it's going to work with other claims to form that larger argument. So in this case, I need to find some different reasons that Dwight Schrute is a terrible manager. And they're going to become the topic sentences of my body paragraphs. So here's an example of a claim, which again is a reason that the argument should be accepted. Dwight is an inferior boss because his methods are behind the times and impractical. So here you can see I'm giving a specific reason to support my argument that he's the worst manager. I can't just state it, right? This is really just a topic sentence in my first body paragraph. I now have to provide support or evidence. For example, scientific data, facts, a documented history, first-hand observations or experiences, information taken from reliable sources, information from interviews with experts. Evidence is anything about which you can ask, what's your source? And you should be able to answer that question. Now, in this case, I guess you could look at it as observations, first-hand experience, right? Because some of this comes from Jim as he's being interviewed. We're observing some of the behaviors. So I need some examples, some information, some support to prove that this claim is valid. For example, he uses outdated technology such as an old-timey punch-out clock that's dangerous and requires punch cards that would have to be checked by hand. Also, he makes the employees use oversized business cards that don't even fit in a modern wallet. So, writing an argumentative essay, I'm going to have a number of claims. And so those will be my body paragraphs. And again, all of them will have support, evidence within them. I'm also going to have to make sure at some point that I have a paragraph that has a counterclaim, and then I need to offer a rebuttal. So a counterclaim is going to be a statement of a claim that disagrees with my argument. So this might be a statement of why Michael is worst, or it might just be an explanation of something that makes Dwight seem like a good manager, right? Because I'm trying to prove he's a terrible manager, worse than Michael. So in this case, our example goes a little something like this. Some supporters of Dwight might argue that he saves the company money by blocking websites and making his employees eat alone. So you can see this works against my argument specifically. And it's not just a simple claim of Dwight actually is a good manager, or, well, Michael's even worse. That's not specific enough. I had to go for something really specific. Now I need a rebuttal. So I need a response to that counterclaim. And the point of the rebuttal is to make the counterclaim seem untrue, weak, less valid, or less important. So my rebuttal is, however, he has inefficient policies that waste employee time in other ways that cancel out the time saved by the other roles. So I'm trying to make that counterclaim seem less valid, but now I need to provide support. For instance, he requires employees to use copier codes, which are unnecessary and cause a huge line at the copy machine, therefore keeping employees from their work for extended periods of time. So you can see how I've tried to invalidate that counterclaim.